shamans were perhaps the first individuals to cultivate practices that took them to the uncanny. They were not liked by their communities generally. They're always suspected of doing nefarious things because they're uncanny. They're weird, even in their own community. They're odd people. They're the ones that know, like the classic subject, right? And I think the thing we need to know is that to me points to something even deeper that is I think, at the core of what's going on here in this discussion. And I keep referring to this book, How God Becomes Real by Lerman, who's one of the great anthropologists right now. And she talks about the reality of spirits and that they're not real in the two, so our culture, our standard modernity, we have the two ways in which things can be real. They can be subjectively real, they can be objectively real, and we don't know how the heck they go together, but we'll just pretend that that's okay, right? And then what people like Heidegger and others have been pointing out is the older, basically, at least in ancient Greece, idea that what grounds the possibility of them fitting together is the most real. And I tried to coin that term, the transjective. And Lerman basically argues that a lot of the sacred phenomena are real in a way I would call transjective. And give me a sec, because this ties into the very thing I think we want to talk about, which is these entities don't exist by our assertion as romantic or by our reception of them from the world smashing into us objectively. Remember, object means to smash into. They exist dialogically. And Jesus even says that where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am also. There, right? This is the idea that these entities are realized, and I know these entities are realized dialogically, right? Jesus is only, and again, I'm not making a metaphysical claim here, but Jesus is only real to you if you pray to him, if you talk to him, if you let him into your life, your life. You even hear evangelical and fundamentalist language being used that way. And by the way, this is not specific to Christianity. This is Lerman's point. So this is a different sense of real, and if you'll allow me, there's a transjective realness. And it's very, very important, because the transjective realness that is approached dialogically, right, puts us on the horizon of intelligibility. And that's the place where we have to seriously play for transformation if we want to move from one world to another. That's the liminal zone. That's the roof of the cave, right? That place there. That's the cognitive roof of the cave. And what's happening in shamanism, right, is that the monological view of the mind is being directly challenged, because the shaman is basically they're in a dialogical identity with other entities, right, and theos, to be possessed by the god, right, and they're challenging our monological mind. They're challenging our monophasic. This goes towards Capella's question about, well, what's a normal and what's an altered state of consciousness? I agree with David Lewis Williams that we should stop thinking of it as a binary. It's a continuum, right? And what we have is a certain state, and I think the state that we call normal consciousness is exactly the one that is highly coordinated with what Taylor calls the buffered self, the monological self that is locked and closed within, and it's protected by a barrier of completely coherent propositions that prevent any of this yucky stuff from getting into us in some ways. And the shaman is uncanny because it's in us deep enough, but it calls to us to the dialogical in some ways. And the shaman is uncanny because it's in us deep enough, but it calls to us to the dialogical. It calls us to the transjective horizon of intelligibility. It challenges the idea that there is one state of consciousness that gives us access to reality. And so that is precisely the issue. I think that's at hand here is the degree to which this uncanny stuff could be appropriated and also therefore misappropriated in order to afford And so, no, like you're invoking it, right? But what I'm saying is it still fits in with this, and the figure. There's a figure that sits there. There's a figure that sits there on the uncanny, doing all of this shamanic stuff and trying to call us into the future, not foretell the future, but that's the prophet, right? And the prophetic figure. And so it's the weird triangle between the priest, the prophet, and the king. And somehow, Jesus is somehow supposed to do all of those. This is the uncanniness we have to get back, even as non-Christians. Jesus is somehow supposed to do all of those, right? And that's what's super uncanny about him. I'm reading David Bentley Hart's translation of the New Testament, and everybody is commenting, and I totally understand why. Because it makes the New Testament weird again. Like really weird. It stops taming down the Greek text to our modern sensibility and throws it in your face in a way that's like, and I'll read a passage, I do Lectio Divina, and I go, that's just weird. I don't know what that means. Like, and if I go back to the older versions, I feel like I was a little bit misled. I feel like I've been duped a bit. Because when I read these older translations, they make sort of wonderful sense to a modern mind that has gone through the Enlightenment. But when you read it, the uncanniness. So I'm trying to suggest possible bridging. I'm trying to show you that outside of the rules and the dogma, in the figure of Jesus, you've got all of these things. You've got everything we've been talking about in the prophet, in tension with the priest, in tension with the king, and somehow going beyond all of them in a way that's deeply uncanny. I'm suggesting to you, if you look to the uncanniness of Jesus, that might give us a possible bridge.